Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. Welcome to my review for what they call the Power Rangers Dino Fury Showdown pack, but it's primarily a 3-pack between the Red Ranger with the Dimetro Fire armor, and then you get an extra Void Knight figure, and you get the new Dino Fury cycle. Now you may be wondering, why do I have the Anakin Skywalker Lost Arm version? Well, that's because when I was getting this out of the box, the arm broke off. Usually I would maybe wait to get a replacement for it, but I figured it was something worth noting in regards to the quality of the figure. This is only the second ever Dino Fury toy I've had break. The only other one was in the Megazord set, and in that case, it was where I applied a fair amount of force. It was kind of like an accident, like I accidentally smashed something when I was transforming it and it caused a break. So I kind of saw that as a little bit more user error. It can be a little bit brittle, I've heard, but in that case, I applied enough force to be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. It was an accident. But in this case, it was right here, it broke at the hinge, and I applied almost no force. Like literally, I was just getting him out of the box, and I just went to lift his elbow up ever so slightly so I could put the sword in there, and it popped off with ease. So it's fairly cheap. I think it has to do with this hinge here. And I've noticed that the hinge joints for the arms on both of these are rather tight. Like when I was getting Void Knight out of the box right after that, I wanted to bend his elbows to put the weapons in there, and the joint on his left arm was really tight as well. So I was extremely careful with it. So I think that's something to make note of. And these do feel like they're the same general quality of the main basic figures. They're not like the most expensive plastic. It is a cheaper plastic, but it's the first time I've encountered that. But it's definitely worth noting as something to consider if you buy this or the individual figures. But let's set that aside for now. So the primary draws of this is the armor figure here. And this is your basic Red Ranger figure, you know, it's all the same with the only difference being the armor. And setting aside the brittleness of it, it's still a decent looking figure. I still think the head sculpt looks good. I like the silver paint on it. I think the armor looks solid for what it is. And it's worth noting, but a question a lot of people will probably have is it removable? And I say yes. The heads don't pop off quite as easy as your Lightning Collection figure. In fact, it's rather hard to pull them off, but I have seen people do it. I think people like to heat it with a hairdryer or something. Like there are ways. And the point is if you get the head off, this is not attached physically. Like it's not even pegged in, it's not glued on, it is loose. So if you can figure out a way to get your heads off, you can likely customize this and put it on the other 5 Ranger figures. So that is worth noting. It'd be kind of cooler if it was more advertised like that, like they don't make a big deal about that, but it is possible, which is nice, and I think the armor looks decent. You know, the articulation is your part for the core stuff. You have the nice hinge ball joint here. You have the elbow joint here, which of course this one broke. You have the swiveling. You have a ball joint here on the leg. It's a little bit stiff as well. Be careful with that. You have a single knee joint right here. And then you have the head and neck articulation, of course, and a little ball joint there. So pretty much par for the core stuff. It's weird because usually I do like these figures. I think for the price, they're pretty solid looking and have pretty decent articulation, and they were better than I thought they would be, but definitely something to think about how easily I broke it. You know, like I said, with the Megazord, in that case, it was a situation where there was enough force that it made sense, but this one was a fairly, you know, small amount of force. Unless I just got spider powers or something, that's definitely something to consider quality-wise. But otherwise, pretending that I didn't break this, I think it's a decent-looking figure. It only highlights that the bike is an exclusive to this set and not this, so there's a small chance we could see an individual release of this in the future, but as of right now, it is also kind of a bummer that you have to buy this set with the bike and Void Knight just to get the armor figure, if that's all you want. Speaking of for the bike here, honestly, the bike's overall okay. It doesn't feel like the highest quality, you know, speaking of quality with the arm breaking, like it feels like a rather cheap bike, but overall, I think it looks decent, you know, from what we've seen from the brief show pictures. You know, as of this recording, all we have is the information from the trailer and the little previews. We haven't seen a whole lot of it, so it's not the most high quality, but I think it looks pretty decent, and at least has a decent enough amount of paint on it to represent what it looks like in the show, especially compared to those new cheapo bike figures we just saw where the bikes aren't painted. So just in that regard, you know, I think if you want it for display or kids that will get it, I think they will like it because it looks enough like the show. It functions like a fun bike toy, but if you really want it for your display, it's not going to feel like the highest quality, but it at least looks kind of decent. And it comes with this weapon too on the side, which you can attach here, or of course you can have him holding it like it's kind of a jousting theme. And the general design of the bike, you know, I like okay. I think it looks pretty cool. You know, nothing too spectacular, but I think it looks decent for what it is. And I do kind of like the jousting gimmick of it because it goes along with the knights. There is a little kickstand here which you can put up, you know, if you want to have it rolling around on the bike, or you have it there so you can display it or just have it standing there. That's nice. You know, so pretty much what you'd expect from this. As far as the Void Knight figure, it is the exact same Void Knight figure you get in the basic assortment. Like I don't really detect a difference. I mean, if I'm really thinking about it, maybe the helmet looks a little bit more slender, but that's like one of those cases where I'm just looking so hard for it, I'm convincing myself. But the paint and general quality is basically the same. So unfortunately, if you want to get this set, you are going to have to double dip, which is something. But if you don't have a Void Knight figure, you know, maybe consider this set. You know, setting aside the possibility of you breaking your figure now, I think this is a solid figure. You know, it looks a little bit blank around here with the way that the gray plastic looks a little bit cheap, but if you look at Void Knight's character design, it is kind of, you know, basic like this. So it's not that bad, but just the gray plastic makes it look a little bit more washed out. But setting that aside and setting aside the potential fragility of the figures now, I think this is a decent looking Void Knight figure. If either you're impatient for a potential lightning release or you just want to save money, I think the sculpt is overall solid and the articulation decent. You know, it features basically the same articulation as Red. As I mentioned, his joint right here is really tight, so I got really nervous about that after breaking this one, and I haven't really had any problems with it so far. You know, with the basic ones I bought, and I bought the 5-pack, I never had a overly tight joint that I was worried about breaking, and I never had a situation where I was breaking it, so that's kind of, you know, first thing. I'm kind of curious, anybody in the comments who's bought any of the Dino Fury basic figures, if you've encountered that. Like I said, I have seen people encounter breaking the Dino Fury Megazord, and in my case, it was a situation where I knew there was too much force, and that's why it broke, but this was a very small amount of force, so that's something to consider. So I would say, setting aside the breaking thing, if you're interested in anything in this set and you don't already have a Void Knight figure, it can be a decent pick. But just be aware of the quality, or at their very least, be careful with yours. As I mentioned, it does also kind of suck that if you want the armor figure, this is the only way to get it right now. And if you already have a Void Knight, you have to double dip. And that's just kind of a thing that annoys me, because I think that they could have a lot of marketing potential with these different armor figures individually, and I'm not sure why they did that. And the bike is overall fine. I just feel like I have mixed thoughts on this set, but because before I broke it, you know, just looking at it, I'm like, oh, this should actually be a pretty neat set, because you get the armor, the bike's kind of cool, they're all around solid figures, but the breaking arm thing is definitely something to consider for buying this set, because the set is more expensive than just buying the individual figure too, so that's kind of a bummer to have the broken arm there. So just, you know, beware and be careful of the broken arms, and like I said, let me know in the comments if you've encountered that before. But setting that aside, if you don't break yours and you're careful with it, I think it's an okay pick if you don't have anything in this set and you're interested in getting it. But that's about it for this one, guys. Until next time, like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell so you can see some fun videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.